Coming up, hidden for a century, the fake that turns out to be a Van Gogh. And basketball diplomacy. Dennis Rodman says he'll coach North Korea's Olympic team. But first, here's what you need to know about the markets this morning. European stocks seen rising, helped by Monday's extraordinary day of diplomacy over Syria. President Obama says Russia's proposal that its ally hand over chemical weapons is a possible breakthrough in the crisis, which could avert military strikes. But he remains skeptical.
If we can exhaust these diplomatic efforts and come up with a formula that gives the international community a verifiable, enforceable mechanism to deal with these chemical weapons in Syria, then I'm all for it. But we're going to have to see specifics. And I think it is reasonable to assume that we would not be at this point if there were not a credible military threat standing behind the norm against the use of chemical weapons.
Data out of China earlier could also drive risk appetite. Industrial production and retail sales figures both beating expectations. Further signs the world's number 2 economy is on a surer footing. Let's get straight to Joe Rundle, head of trading ETX Capital. Morning to you, Joe. These factory output numbers, retail sales numbers in China come on the back of strong factory activity data. Is that it now? Are we on a firmer footing?
Yeah, I think we are on a firmer footing, and I think the China is key because it will lead the whole of the global economy. So as long as China's recovering or not going for a hard landing, I think it's very positive for equity markets. And actually, if China's growing, it will drag the US with it as well. So I think we're on a positive footing for world economic growth at the moment.
Receding expectations of action on Syria. What does that do to market sentiment?
Well, I mean, it should be positive for the market. I think the trouble is it's a bit wishy-washy what we've heard. There's a lot of unknowns, so I think you're going to see a big chunk of uncertainty put on the market and just extending that range. So you will get some wild swings. You're going to see oil moving around dramatically on what politicians are saying. And so I don't think it's particularly helpful for the market to have uncertainty for a continued period of time.
Sure. How do you play emerging markets right now? We saw a little bit of support from the disappointing US jobs data. Is this going to be a short bounce?
I believe that the Fed will announce some tapering this week. I'm not in the camp that because of that weak job figure they're going to do nothing. So I think we'll see 5, maybe 10 billion this week, and I think that will put a sharp sell-off onto the emerging markets. But actually, I think that's the end of tapering for until Q1 or Q2 next year. So then we'll see a bounce back in emerging markets. But it's going to be a pretty volatile session. I would rather be involved in US equities, which I firmly believe will be higher towards the end of the year.
So, OK, a little bit of tapering now, 5-10 billion, you say. Expectations are then for, a few months out. Do you stay out of emerging markets on the back of that?
Yeah, I do. I think as the market understands what the Fed is going to do, that they're not going to sharply withdraw from tapering, there will be a switch back, a slower, sort of more orderly switch back into US debt and developed markets, because people want that yield and want the certainty, and they understand tapering is coming to an end, but not until the economy is in a recovered phase. So I think it will be an orderly unwind out of emerging markets. I guess the big risk is if the Fed suddenly pull the plug on tapering, you're going to see a big bubble burst.
Quick word on Glencore Xstrata on the corporate side. Synergies, what are they saying? 2 billion next year, better than the market was expecting. What's it going to do to the stock?
Well, it should be a lot higher. It's quite an opaque stock with the cost structure, and this merger was a big saga, and actually it's very positive that they are getting synergies through, and it's always the questions with mergers, are they actually good for shareholder values? And it looks like this one might have pulled it off, so hopefully we'll see the stock up today, and if they can carry on, we should see a continued upward move, especially with a recovering China.
Great. Joe, thanks a lot. World's biggest motor show kicks off today in Frankfurt, where German car makers will be showing off the benefits of years of investment. Our reporter Julian Satterthwaite has already spoken to the boss of Jaguar Land Rover, who told us about his plans for new sports and crossover cars aimed at younger generation.
Yes, we will get younger customers who can really step up the ladder within the Range Rover and Land Rover, but also Jaguar portfolio. But at the end of the day, it's a huge market opportunity being in the segment, and therefore we decided we will go there with a tailor-made vehicle.
More from the motor show throughout the day, of course, including interviews with the CEOs of Renault, Nissan, Ford Europe and SEAT. World news, senior US defense officials say a strong response in Syria would help deter North Korea from using its massive chemical weapons arsenal. But former NBA star Dennis Rodman is hoping basketball diplomacy might offer a simpler solution. Rodman will train a North Korean basketball team for a pair of exhibitions against a US team next year and says he's been asked to coach their next Olympic team. At a press conference in New York, Rodman talked of his friendship with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, a man he calls the Marshal.
If you meet the Marshal over there, he's a very good guy. And that's very serious. He has to do his job, but he's a very good guy. And then one thing, he gave me the rights and everything about doing one thing. He said, Dennis, I want you to go over to America and say, guess what? We want people to come over here because we're not a bad country.
Finally, it's been kept in an attic for a century because its owner thought it was a fake, but art experts have revealed this French landscape painting is the work of Dutch master Vincent van Gogh. Sunset Montmajour was painted in 1888 when Van Gogh was living in the south of France. The work will go on show at the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam later this month for a year. That's it. I'm Axel Threlfall. This is Reuters.